Alright guys, Reaper here. So this is a video that I've been trying to decide if I was going to do or not. And I know that there's probably a lot of people that think making this a video is, well, kind of odd, but I've ultimately felt that it's probably better and a lot easier for me to kind of do a one-on-one, between me and all of you to better fill everybody in on the situation with my dad and just kind of answer potentially some unanswered questions and fill in some gaps, especially for those of you on my Facebook or business page or whatever that's been kind of following along with this. I understand some of my posts are probably been a little bit confusing, and a lot of that's just because I was posting as I was getting information, and there's just been a lot of back and forth and up and down and all around kind of stuff. So this is probably going to be a little bit of a longer video, and that's because I want to try and go through everything from the beginning to, well, where we are now, and just explain everything the best that I possibly can. So my dad, or Father Time as a lot of you probably know him as, had a major stroke about 3.5 weeks ago on Monday the 30th, I believe was the day. But before I get into all of that, let's rewind a little bit back to like 2014, 2015-ish. Pops had what I'll consider his first confirmed stroke. And I say confirmed because he went to the hospital and, went through all that for that. But yeah, 2014, 2015, he had a stroke. Had him life-flighted to the hospital, and I'm pretty sure that's when he spent a day or two in the hospital as a result of that. Any stroke is, well, I wouldn't consider it minor. A stroke is, just one of those things that you don't take lightly. But he bounced back from it pretty quick, and it was pretty much entirely himself. It didn't really affect him, physically or anything like that. There was a little bit of mental, I think, that was affected as far as short-term memory and temperament, but nothing, to really truly be concerned about. But in between that point and then, I believe 2019, he had another mini stroke, and of course wound up having to take him to the hospital for that as well. So just to explain my dad and to get a feel of the type of man he is and how stubborn he really is, in between the first stroke and the second stroke, I'm fairly certain he had several little episodes and things happened that, he just didn't tell anybody about or tried to hide really well. In fact, before I took him in for his second mini stroke, I'm pretty sure he had one a handful of days before that, or was having issues that was leading up to that second one. So I think with the first one, they even gave him blood pressure medications and things like that, which I think he took maybe for a couple weeks and then stopped because he just doesn't believe in that and thinks that they probably do more damage than good. Besides the point anyway right now. But with all of that, I'm going to say roughly 3 months ago now, since we're 3 weeks into what's going on now, he started having issues that I kind of picked up on. It took me probably a little longer to really recognize and realize that, okay, this isn't what you're playing it out to be. But he was apparently having dizziness, lightheadedness, real severe loss of strength, sometimes just couldn't stand up, real tired and sleepy, and then vomiting every so often as a result of it. So like the first time I really started recognizing it and stuff, he kind of tried to play it off that he had food poisoning, which ultimately that one was probably possible because he might have ate something that was somewhat questionable on whether it was good or not. So okay, I bought into that one. And then these episodes were just so short and minute, just they came probably as quickly as they went, or they went as quickly as they came, whatever. But every now and again I'd catch that he was like, "Oh man, I just got dizzy," or "I can't focus with my eyes," and which that's something I've noticed over the course of a handful of years anyway, is that his vision was getting a little worse. And so I was just thinking, okay, maybe we need to get you some real glasses. Maybe you're having some eye issues. So didn't think too much into it. But then they started persisting and happening a little more regularly. And I think they were happening more than he was letting me see, or just, letting on. He wasn't really telling me, but he started getting in that mode where he was mentioning these things happening more regularly, and I was catching them, especially when he'd vomit, and have that issue that just didn't make any sense to me. So I started getting on his ass real hot and heavy about, look, I know you don't want to believe that you had those other 2 strokes, and that you're fine now or whatever, but the reality is you are aging. You did have 2 strokes, and we need to get you into a doctor and see what's going on, because what's going on isn't normal. You shouldn't be having these issues, and they shouldn't be persisting like they are. So really pushing him, man, like, hey, look, you're either having symptoms that could be leading up to another stroke, maybe you have a blockage, or you're having some kind of neurological problems. So finally, he'd write a lot of that off. He changed the subject and bringing these things up. But I think he finally started getting serious, because we started talking about a lot of other things in life too. What's going to happen when you do pass? You don't have life insurance. What about everything that's got to be taken care of? Whether it be funeral expenses, costs, just any of that stuff. We got real serious about that, and he was apparently really looking into this stuff hardcore, and was planning on going into the doctor probably a week or 2 after, all of this happened, probably about now, honestly. So he was taking it seriously and looking into it, and realized that, yeah, those were problems. Well, unfortunately, too little too late, I guess. So that Monday morning, or let's say Sunday, let's just go to the night before Sunday of all of this happening, my schedule kind of got changed around. I was on a daytime schedule, and then somehow switched, in that previous week to a nighttime schedule, which thank God happened. So I got up basically about the time he was going to bed, and he was fine. He seemed fine. He wasn't acting any different, wasn't having any issues. I was reading a little bit, got tired, decided he was going to bed. Okay, so I'm up all night, and he's fine. He got up a couple times, he went to the kitchen, ate like a little snack, got something to drink, so on and so forth, went and laid back down. And, oh man, it was probably every bit of about 6:30 in the morning. I was starting to get tired, and thought that I'd probably go to bed, but decided I'd stay up a little longer. And he wound up getting up like he usually does, like he's going to the bathroom, and made it to the front door. And it took me a minute or 2 to realize that, he's still standing there, because where I sit here in this chair and where the door is, depending on how I'm sitting, like if I'm back here, it's hard to see that part of the door. But I just happened to lean up and saw that he was standing up against the door, holding on to the doorknob with his head up against the door, and just sitting there. And I'm like, well, maybe he's just kind of asleep, or still trying to wake up or something. So I'm sitting there staring at him, and finally I just go, hey, you okay? And he goes, no, I feel really, really dizzy, lightheaded. I just got to stand here for a minute. I was like, okay. So I give it a couple minutes, and he's not moving. Alright, so I get up and I walk over to, basically, within a few feet of him. And I ask him, I said, is your vision blurry, or are you feeling real lightheaded, are you dizzy? And he's like, yeah, okay. Well, if that's the case, then how about we sit down? You want to sit down? And he goes, I don't think I can. I was like, okay. So I walk up to him and I get my hands around him, try to get it up under his shoulders and go, all right, I'm going to help you, and let's sit down. Well, as soon as he lets go of that doorknob, I can tell, like, he's shaking, like, from, his lower back, his hips down, and, like, he can't, his coordination's off. Like, he feels like he's trying to step, but he can't, and he's shaking. So, by all respects, I was able to kind of help get him to walk enough and almost partially carry him, get him to sit down at his couch. And no sooner than I got him sat down, he immediately started to vomit. So I got a bag for him to throw up in and paper towels, and I'm like, okay, we're done. We're not playing this game anymore. We're going. I'm taking you to the hospital. It's happening. Oh no, we don't. Why? We don't need to do that. I'm like, yeah, no, we do. We're doing it. I'm sorry. This is bad. And he's like, no, I just need to lay down and get some sleep. I'll sleep it off. No, we're going to the hospital. So of course that day, it's super cold. Things are frozen. We had light rain, mist. So I had to go out, get the truck started, try and warm up. Try to get the ice off the windshield, and I'm running around trying to get everything I know I need to take, and trying to get socks on him and trying to get him in a position in a way that I can get him from the living room to the truck. So he was able to kind of get up on his own and was able to help maneuver him and get him into the truck. So after that, like I said, getting everything I knew I needed, locked the door, boom, in the truck going. In between this too, while trying to get the truck going and everything else, I'd called a couple friends and asked the questions I thought I needed to ask and confirm, okay, yeah, get him to the hospital. So I'm going, and we don't even make it, maybe not even 5 miles, man. And I was afraid of this, but I thought I had enough because the gas gauge in the truck doesn't work. But I thought by the miles I had on there, I had enough to make it at least to the gas station. And well, I didn't. we run out of gas in one of the worst places you can run out of gas. It's down in this hollow. Normally you don't get any service, and I'm not even halfway to town or a gas station yet. So now I'm freaking out. The old man's still vomiting. He's not improving, and I'm starting to try and make phone calls and see who I can get a hold of, and it just I'm trying my damnedest to find a way to hurry up and get him where I need to get him. So I call my friend's wife, who's there in town at the post office, and explaining the situation and just like trying to figure something out. Well, thankfully this older couple is coming down the road in their truck, and I go and wave them down and tell them the situation, and like, look, I'm out of gas. I need gas. I need to find a way to, maybe you can take him to the gas station or whatever. As it turned out, they had a whole can of gas over at their house, so they turned around and went and got the gas for me. I jump on the phone to call 911, and I'm talking to dispatch, and I'm trying to explain to them where I'm at, and I can't for the life of me remember what the county road number is for this, but I'm telling them I need an ambulance, and look, since you guys can't pin where I'm at or figure out where I'm at apparently, just have the ambulance go to the store and I'll meet them there. So they come back, I get gas in the truck, make it to the store, and yeah, he's bad. We get him out of the truck, we get him inside to keep him warm, and at that point the ambulance is still 30 minutes out, and finally gets there, and they get him in the ambulance, and everything they did, vitals and so on and so forth, they said he was stabled out, EKG, heart was fine, went ahead and took him to the hospital. So I hung out for a few minutes talking to first responders and some of the people there that I know, and then got gas and hauled ass to hospital, where my best friend, Brother Jay, was on his way, took off work, and went to the hospital to meet me there to be there for everything. And he apparently just got there right before we got there, or I got there, my dad. So you go in, go back there, and this is just a whole cluster, man. Uh, Definitely wasn't getting any better. He started developing this headache behind his right eye. He's still dry heaving and all this other stuff, and he's just laying down and just, yeah, he's declining. So long story short on all of that, they ran a CAT scan, didn't find anything, and the nurse practitioner was ultimately trying to kick him out, get him out of the hospital as quickly as possible. They even had him sign discharge papers at one point, like, oh, hey, you get to go home. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not having a stroke. You're fine. And he's like, I don't need to be going anywhere. He was cognitive enough to be able to understand how he felt and what was going on with him, that he knew, no, I don't need to be leaving. And they're sitting there going, well, no, you're just having high blood pressure. Here's some medications. We're going to send you home. No, I don't need to be going. And I'm telling him the same thing. Look, he does not need to be going anywhere. And my buddy Josh is telling him the same thing. He does not need to leave. So then they go around and fiddle around and waste time. Well, how about we get you some food and let's see if you improve after you eat. So we're waiting around, and I mean, we're just burning time at this point. So they bring him food, and he can barely eat it. No, they can't eat it. He's not getting better. Dude finally comes back in, and it's like, well, how you feeling? He goes, no different. I'm not getting better. He goes, oh, okay, well, we're gonna have to admit you to the hospital then. And we're like, what the hell do you think he is? So he's like, good, yeah, admit me. Okay, well, I'm gonna admit you. So finally, somebody comes in to take blood work, and then they come in to go get him an MRI. So he's gone about an hour. And in that time, Fat Tony does arrive. He arrives right after he gets back from MRI, and we're not even in there maybe 15, 20 minutes. And he comes back in and says, well, I mean, completely different tone. It turns out that, from the MRI, we can see that you have had a stroke and a couple others. And so, yeah. So then they move him to a room, and, he's improved, I would say, at that point. Or so it seemed. He was talking, his speech was starting to get a little rough, but it was still understand him. He was still able to talk and do everything, and but he wasn't able to get up and stand properly and all that. So they assigned a neurologist to him to come see him in the morning and all of that. So I stayed overnight and helped him and tried to do whatever I could as far as him having to go to the bathroom and, just all of that stuff all around. So they come in the morning and they do a swallow test, and they felt confident that he was able to still swallow properly, and they gave him some water, some coffee, and then breakfast. But he was having problems with, like, really staying awake. He'd drift in and out even while he was eating. And then also, I did catch that he was coughing a little bit, but I didn't know if that was, if swallowing related. I wasn't thinking anything about that. And of course, they brought him lunch too a little later. But the neurologist came in explaining everything, and they're doing all their little tests, and they seem to act relatively confident in some of the things they're saying, that, well, he's doing great, a lot better than they expected him to be, and all this other stuff. So, I'm thinking, okay, good. This is a good sign. He's going to be able to bounce back from this, and we're not going to likely be here, for more than X amount of days. So I ultimately decided at noon lunch, when they brought him his lunch, that, all right, Dad, I'm gonna set this up for you, and I'm gonna run to the house and go turn off all the lights we left on when we left, and try to get some things cleaned up and grab some stuff that I need to bring back and all that, and go get a shower and figure out stuff with my dog and just all of this stuff. So in between that time and when I get back later that evening, apparently a lot had happened. I guess some of the nurses or stuff weren't coming in there and checking on him regularly enough, and he really had to pee, so he tried to get out of bed himself, and as a result, he took a really big fall and ripped pretty much everything out of the wall too that was hooked up to him, and yeah, it was apparently not really a good thing. So when I got back, I come to this empty room and he's gone, and now I'm starting to freak out. Like, what the hell is going? Where is he? Go and ask. They moved him to a new room. You know, he just got back from like another CAT scan, and I think maybe X-ray or something. And you know, I get in there, and I mean his speech has really gone downhill now. It's almost impossible to understand him. I could get some of it and understand some of it. And he was trying to explain to me what happened. I could see he's starting to get agitated and irritated, and nurses were coming in and telling me, and you know, he's getting real fidgety and just all kinds of things. Well, he quickly degraded over the course of that night and got kind of bad. If you have ever had to deal with stroke patients, then you know that some of them, you know, can very much change for a while and become very hateful and spiteful for a while, and that's kind of where he went. I mean, with me, the nurses, he was constantly trying to get out of bed. He got really confused, didn't know that he was in the hospital, and sat there and argued and fought with him for a couple hours about it. And yeah, he just didn't know where he was. You know, he thought he was home, and he thought that I was doing things to him that I wasn't doing, and yeah, it got bad. So, you know, to also shorten that whole story of everything there, at some point I decided it wasn't good for me to be in the room, because me being there was just irritating him. And so I pleaded, and I was calling friends and just trying to be okay with the whole thing as it's unraveling. And my friends were, you know, reassuring me and you know, just telling me that, well, look, you know, that's not your dad right now. You know your dad. He wouldn't say those things to you if it was him. And I know that, and I know it wasn't his fault. And, I was just worried and ultimately probably as scared as I could possibly be. So I started pleading with the nurses, like, hey, can we get a doctor in here to see him? What's going on? Why is he declining like this? You know, he was doing great earlier. I'm trying to figure out what happened while I was gone. You know, they claimed that they had tried to call me and tell me that all this had happened, and I never got a call, and I never got a voicemail or anything. So I had to re-give them my number to make sure if I ever had to step out or leave again that got a call. But yeah, anyway, back to, pleading with him, get a doctor in here and find out, like, can we give him a sedative, you know, because he's gonna wind up hurting himself if we don't, you know, he's gonna hurt other people. And one of the nurses basically just told me, well, you go deal with him, and I'll see if I can go ahead and get a sedative, you know, down here. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, talk about really, you know, wanting to piss somebody off. That wasn't cool. So finally they figured it out. I went outside, stepped outside, made some calls, told people what was going on, and talking about the whole thing, and that, so when I came back, they were able to do that, get him a sedative, calmed him down. I decided to go sleep in the waiting room, and in between that period of time that I passed out, one of the nurses realized that, well, he had kind of a wet cough going on now. Okay? So they ordered x-rays and CAT scans and all this other stuff, I guess, again. And at some point I get woke up again later to them telling me, well, here's the situation, and I got the doctor coming up to look at him. We're going to have to move him down to ICU. Okay, what? Turned out that he was aspirating. He had aspirated all of his food from like breakfast and lunch. It went down into his lungs, so now he's developing severe pneumonia. which that took him a minute to figure that out because the doctor come up, he looked at him, he was telling me what's going on. I went down with him to the ICU, got in there, and he was explaining, well, we think he's lost his ability to properly swallow, and he's aspirating all of his saliva into his lungs, and that's what. But it turned out to be the food. So we get down there, and this is just an awful time. They're telling me that we may have to intubate your dad, and all of this stuff. So I'm really starting to break, and I don't know what's going on at this point and how to really handle everything. And they get down there, and he's a little bit more cognitive and alert, and he's no longer in that mode he was in. And some of that day is kind of a blur, to be honest with you. But he continued to get a little better, and we could have conversations and talk, and enough to explain to him about the intubation and everything. So, but yeah, I get a hold of my buddy Josh again, and he comes back in that following day, or that day of, and Dad seems to be doing pretty good again. They go through all the tests, and neurologist starts explaining some stuff, and now stating that, oh, well, I thought this would probably wind up happening with him losing his ability to swallow and all this, and so on and so forth. And this is, I kind of expected this, but she still seemed really hopeful, and that, yeah, things are going to be able to improve. Well, in between all this time, he started, he still had some of the strength and ability in his right arm and right leg. His speech was a little better that day, but it wasn't great. We couldn't really fully understand him. So I got it in my mind that, hey, how about we give you a pen and a pad and see if you can write? Well, at the time, yeah, he could still write. We were able to get words and, sentences and things that he was trying to ask and explain to us, since we couldn't understand him. And he was doing real good then. There, again, at least it seemed. But the pneumonia was getting worse, and I can't remember. I think it was the next day, because he started going up and down again a little bit. But the next day, wound up having to intubate him because he got real bad there for a while. And I just, yeah, I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life, honestly, because that with all of that, I really thought I was about to lose my dad. And while I don't feel like that's going to happen now, it's still always a possibility, I guess. But yeah, so we wound up having to intubate him that night, and that was a very hard thing to do, because I had to explain to him, and he was not himself, so trying to explain it to him was really hard. And I think I was able to get through to him enough to let him know what was about to happen, and that we had to do this. Otherwise, it was likely that he was going to die from the pneumonia if we didn't get him intubated. So we wound up intubating him, and he was like that for a good couple days or so before they were able to pull him off of it. And he did all right, and I explained everything to him, and he was doing good, and I had conversations with him and was updating him on things, and he was mentally cognitive. He's there. His mental ability to understand and perceive what was going on was there. So, the thing of it was, like, he was mostly worried about me and finances and all this other stuff, and things that he was trying to tell me about finances, and just without being able to really understand him, it was making things hard to, on both of us. One, I couldn't understand him. Two, he was getting mad that he couldn't get it all out. But at that point, he was still doing decent. That we still had physical therapy coming in when he was awake and alert, and doing stuff with him and getting him up and trying to move him and stuff. And So of course, being intubated too, we wound up having he had to get a peg tube, a feeding tube with all that, so he was getting nutrition and food, and obviously because he can't swallow, he can't physically eat or drink anything right now. So uh, I was able to explain all of that when they pulled him off of intubation, extubated or whatever, and uh, he was understanding of it all. The doctor was in there. We had a conversation. I explained things to him, and was trying to let him know that, we might have to re-intubate you with everything that's going on, your secretions and your inability to swallow, and with that we may wind up having to trach you. And ultimately, all he wanted to know with that was what I wanted him to do. And so, I just told him, look, I want you to keep fighting, and I don't want you to be giving up. So I think that we need to do this if it comes down to it, because it's going to be the best possible route to, make sure that you can recover and get better and, not essentially die from everything. And he said, okay, yeah, let's do it. If we have to do it, do it. And but he was still doing the declining thing near the end of the day, with mentally wise, and got really fixated and fidgety on things. And this has resulted in him on several occasions, unfortunately, pulling out, IVs, leads. Pulled out his peg tube once, has repeatedly tried to pull out his catheter or Foley. And, that led to him also being restrained, so that's, a whole other thing against him with that. Yeah, he's been trached about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks now, actually. When he first got it, he was still hooked up to intubation part of it, helping him breathe on it. He really didn't like that, and he was always trying to talk, so he was trying to mouth words, and, he's, again, in and out of being properly coherent, and just, not his usual self. It just depends, and sometimes it comes down to being sedated or just the time of day. And I had a real bad scare one night. I woke up to them and everyone else kind of freaking out because his O2 levels kept dropping, and a lot of that's still that stuff, in his lungs that was trying to come up, and and having to go through and suction it out, either through his nasal cavity, and also with intubation, and then now, of course, with the trach, they can go in and do it that way. But yeah, that I woke up this one night, and apparently his pupils had changed to being very uneven, and at first, of course, I was getting the news, well, he might have had another stroke, we got to figure this out, or, we're hoping that this isn't the case, but it is possible that, he might have bleeding on the brain. And I can honestly tell you guys, it's been an up and down roller coaster for the past 3 weeks. And for the first couple weeks, for the most part, I was there almost 24/7. I mean, there obviously the time I went home Tuesday, which I regretted doing. But what's going on here with this is that type of stroke he had is in his brainstem, essentially, and that's why he's lost the ability to swallow, lost his gag reflex, lost his his cough. That's his coordination issues, his speech. That's also why his right side is affected. I mean, he can move and use it a little bit, but for the most part, it's extremely weak. So this is ultimately one of, if not the worst stroke that you can essentially have. He still has pretty bad swelling on the brain from the stroke. That's going to take a while to really, come down. And in fact, the day we actually had to trach him, I almost forgot about that, is he was getting very minimal oxygen to the brain there for a while with that swelling, and was hallucinating real badly. And it was an extremely scary situation and day, because just some of the things that he was doing. And he was talking to people and things that weren't there. It was just, yeah, I still don't know how to really deal with that. Luckily, he hasn't really been doing much of that since. I think he does occasionally. So Saturday afternoon, before I had to take off for the weekend for a while to try and work on some financial and just kind of take care of some other things away from home, I got to talk to Pops for a while, and he was relatively doing pretty good at that point. He's getting a little fidgety, so he's on his slide to start having kind of a rough night, I think. But one of the things he said to me, which was just kind of out of nowhere, was thanks for not giving up on me. And of course, I was like, well, yeah, of course, Dad, I'm not giving up on you. I don't know why you'd think that. Just kind of gave me this, I don't know, look, and I just reminded him, this, don't ever think I'm going to give up on you. I'm doing everything I can to make sure we can get you better and get you out of here, and just long-term stuff. So I've been trying to do everything that I know you're probably worried about, but you don't need to worry about. But me giving up on you is not one of those things don't ever think that. It's not happening. And I keep reminding him of that, don't give up on yourself, and don't give up on me either, and just keep fighting, and, make sure that you're putting in the work to get better, because we can get you there. So, I did call a little bit ago. I had to run to the store and called the ICU, talked to his nurse to see how he was doing today, and said that apparently he had a pretty good day today. He worked with physical therapy. He's been relatively talkative and, chatting with the nurse and various other people, and they were able to get him out of bed. He wasn't really able to stand on his own or anything, obviously, but they got him in a chair, and he spent a good, decent part of the day in the chair sitting up so there was that, and seemed to still be doing pretty good. Didn't seem like he was having a downward slope or anything, so that was really it felt like a weight lifted, I guess. When you call in and you have to hear that your dad's having one of those bad moments or bad days, or that he tried pulling this or that out, or just whatever. So that was that was a good win today anyway, to hear that he was having a good day, and that he did work with physical therapy and was moving his his good side, his left side, and they were working out his right side, trying to help get some of that back. He also had something else, and I'm sorry that I'm jumping around on some of this, guys. Past 3 weeks have just, it's all kind of coming together for me. It's all fallen, over itself, and sometimes it's hard for me to remember and pinpoint exact days. And some things are just kind of coming to me as I'm talking too. But he had some issues there too when I was gone, not this past weekend, but the last weekend, where when I came back, he had his arm where it was constantly almost like real bad. Everything was basically just tightening up on that side, and I don't think he was doing it on purpose, but I could tell it was definitely causing him pain. And as a result of everything, and I think part of that's because this side's all loose, is he's got his head constantly crooked to the side, and so he sits like this a lot. So they're trying to get him worked, so he's moving his head over this way a little more and kind of gets it straightened back out, so he's it's not gonna get stuck over there. The weird thing is, like, when he's in his bad moods and he's really trying to move around and do stuff, he starts moving his right arm and his right leg, and picking him up and making a fist and moving his fingers and his hands. So somewhere in there he definitely can do that. It just seems like his brain's not firing in the order it should be to make it happen when it should happen. Like when he's having his good moments. So I don't know. I think that's just something that physical therapy wise, and hopefully long term, he's gonna have to do that, over and over again, repetitively, to get some of that muscle memory and everything back to be able to use that. The biggest thing here is that we've really been trying to get LTEC approval, and insurance just keeps denying it. They denied him right off the bat when he was intubated, and then they come back and said, well, he has to be intubated for like a minimum of 21 days before we can approve it, or trached and extubated for 7 days. And they did all that, and we went through that, and the doctor was really hopeful and hoping that after we did that they would approve him. They denied it again, and they just keep finding reasons to try and deny him the care he needs. He was approved for a nursing home, but the reality of it is, if he goes to a nursing home, he's never going to make any kind of recovery, and they just don't have the ability to take care of him around the clock like what he needs. And ultimately, I know for a fact that he can make a recovery and he can bounce back, but he can't do that in a nursing home. If he goes to a nursing home, I have no doubt in my mind that at some point he's going to die. Whether it be in the nursing home or because the lack of care, he'll wind up back in the ICU in the hospital and go back through pneumonia and aspiration and just all kinds of crap, especially with feeding tube and everything else right now, that it's just not possible in a nursing home. So I had a peer-to-peer, I can't remember if it was this last week now or not. It's probably been a week and a half now. They had a peer-to-peer, the doctor and insurance and whoever. They denied it. So then they put in an appeal. And I even asked the questions with the appeal. What's the chances if, well, now we're on an appeal, that he gets approved, and they told me that, well, it's pretty rare that if you go to the appeal status that they deny it again. Normally they will approve it, but sometimes they do deny it. Well, they denied his appeal. So now they're in another appeal trying to get it approved because, well, the doctors, the nurses, even, the guy from LTech, caseworkers, everything. Everybody thinks he needs LTech. That's where he needs to go. That's what he needs to be able to get some of his abilities back, or whatever abilities he's going to get back. Hopefully most of them, or if not all of them. I'm praying for miracles here, believe me. But we're just in limbo. I mean, this is freaking ridiculous. I kind of on razor's edge here with insurance, and it just pisses me off that they can't seem to get their head out of their ass and realize that this is what he needs. And I'm sure they know that's probably what he needs. They just don't care, and they're trying everything, and they're damnedest to not send him there because they don't want to pay it. They don't want to pay out for his recovery and what he needs. So I'm trying to work on some things to, I don't know, either do a fundraiser or even with my business, maybe do some kind of giveaway thing and try to raise money and funds for finances and his care and things I'm going to have to do to change this house if he does get to come home, and I can find a way to get him home after, some recovery, because, the way we live it's just not feasible. There's no way I can take care of him by myself, and not 24 hours a day, 7 days a week either. So there's things that have to be done to the house and part of the property, and just various things to, even at that point, make it feasible and just a space that's capable for him to get around and be able to live in. So ultimately, regardless of what facility he goes to, or the what, why, when, where, how, long-term, nursing home, whatever it is, the reality here is that insurance is only going to cover up to 21 days of stay. That's the only credits he apparently has for that. And at the end of that 21 days, they will turn around and start taking pretty much all of his Social Security, which presents a major problem for both him and I, essentially because his Social Security is what helps cover, various bills and, payouts and everything like that. So, on top of everything, I'm going to have to deal with a bunch of financial stuff to ultimately, regardless of what happens, make sure that, you know, he continues to get the care, or even if they don't approve him, that I can get him into some kind of care facility to make sure he can make his recovery to come home and still has a home to come home to. So that's kind of why I want to try and figure something out for raising funds or donation, or, even like I said, a raffle giveaway thing to raise money for long-term goals. Again, like I said earlier, just trying to get this house set up and make sure that everything's covered ultimately for a longer stay too, because I have no doubt 21 days is not going to be enough. He's probably looking at every bit of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months to really be able to bounce back from any of this, if or at least bounce back as much as he can. I've pretty much accepted the fact that it's not likely I'm ever going to fully get my father back, how he was before this stroke. And I don't know if that means physically or, mentally, what I don't know. They don't know. I've asked all these questions. I've asked every question I can think of, and I continue to re-ask the questions when it comes to different people, doctors, nurses, just anybody and everybody. I've asked. Yeah, I don't know if it's just because I'm clutching at straws and hoping for some kind of miracle response or answer, or if I'm just ultimately trying to prepare myself, for whatever it may be and whatever the outcome may wind up being. I do have a lot of high hopes, and I feel that, he could probably mostly get his ability to, walk and be able to do things himself again. And I think, he could probably even get his speech back, and hopefully his ability to swallow will come back. I don't think they've done another swallow test with him yet, especially with the trach and everything. I do know that if he does get his ability to swallow and his gag reflex and his cough has kind of come back, it's just his ability to swallow still wasn't there with all those two things, or his speech as well. So if his ability to swallow comes back, the way I understand it, the trach can come out, that'll heal up. Good deal. That means the peg tube, his feeding tube, can come out too. So, those things are by no means permanent, provided, things that he needs to come back comes back. All of that being said, I've hit a point now where I can't be at the hospital every day. I was trying to make it a thing, with the exception of when I had to come home for a night or take off for a couple of days to go do stuff, that I was predominantly trying to be at the hospital every day, for a while, or a good half of the day, to, just be there with him. I know that it makes him feel better that I'm there, and even when he gets in some of his little states, I think, me being able to talk to him for a while and re-explain things kind of helps level him back out and brings him back to where he's really is, instead of where he thinks he is, I guess, is the words I'm trying to think of. But it just, physically, financially, emotionally, being there 24/7 with them, it's not feasible. I understand that. It's just not possible. So, as of Tuesday, I've been home, and I'll probably either go back in tomorrow or Saturday and spend as much time with him as I can. I'm trying to take care of a lot of stuff here at home and figure out fun stuff, not fun, but funds, to, be able to still continue to go see him as regularly and as often as I possibly can. But gas-wise, it's stacking up quick. With all of that, I wanted to thank everybody that has sent Dad, cards or letters. He's really not fully capable of reading them most of the time. Occasionally, he probably could. I know he's tried to read his book a few times, and he gets frustrated with that because he can only use one hand, and turning pages and keeping it open was really starting to get on his nerves. So I devised this little thing with a clipboard to hold the pages and the book open and set it up so he could read and turn, but after a little while he starts getting a little worn out, and that's when he gets in one of those modes, and then he's done. But yes, I have read the cards to him, and I think it really kind of made him happy, and he was very pleased to get cards. So I just wanted to thank all of you that sent those, and for anybody else that may have some on the way. As they come in, I'll take them into them and continue to read them. As far as me and everybody wondering how I'm doing or handling everything, physically I'm fine, guys. I'm tired. I'm emotionally burnt out. I'm just worn out. I'm sure you guys can probably tell from this video. It's taken a toll on me, and not being there and then being there and then being home. It's no different. I am trying to get rest when I can. I don't sleep for very long, and that's just, a lot of that comes with the fear, and just I'm on high alert. I'm afraid I'll miss a phone call, or, sometimes I'll nod out and then I'll wake up, want to check everything out. Yeah, it's a lot. I've been pushed, pulled, and torn in every direction more times than once, and it's kind of got to me. Some of the stress is starting to build up a little bit off and on. And of course, being here kind of by myself, I keep expecting to look over and see Pops reading his book or scrolling Facebook or something, and it's a little harder than I guess what I expected, but I don't even know if I knew what I would ever expect in a situation like this. So, yeah, I'm just trying to take care of things and still kind of run business stuff and do my best to catch up, and of course take care of everything here at the house, and just try to figure things out. I've decided that I will probably wind up selling off a bunch of stuff if I have to, maybe even half of everything I own, just to get the money and funds to, cover some of that stuff without donations. I'm very prideful when it comes to asking for help in that regard. I will still be making videos and doing YouTube stuff, just not, as regularly as I was. Clearly, this is more important, and my main concern is my father and his health. And of course, financial and bills and just everything that's got to be covered and taken care of second. So I've just got a lot going on. I'm just completely overwhelmed, honestly. But yeah, I will still be doing videos. I will keep updating you guys. I don't know if I'll update in videos or if I'll update doing posts. Doing written posts is honestly more overwhelming, I think, than doing videos, even though, I thought I was going to be able to do this video in one take, and just kind of found myself there going back through everything, having to stop a few times here and there, and kind of come back to it, just because it still comes and goes, it hits, and I'm just trying to figure out and do everything I can, but I want to also keep all of you updated and informed. I'm sure I've left some things out and I've forgotten some things, but this is, for the most part, this is pretty much the full update and everything in regards to what's happening and has been going on. One thing I decided to do is I've been sneaking videos at the hospital occasionally of my dad. I know that seems a little weird maybe, but part of it was just a realization that worst case scenario, if things don't get better, or if Dad didn't get better, that, it's not that I want to remember him in that state or in the hospital, but more or less that what if this is the last moments I get to truly spend with my dad, or so yeah, when he's doing good and he's got his good moments going, I've been taking little videos, especially when he's cracking jokes and being his usual smart-ass self. That way I have something, because we hadn't been doing that a lot before all this, for various reasons. And there's some of that regret in me because of that. But also, number 2 point is, it also dawned on me in all of that he's going to have days, I know, that he either doesn't remember progress, or he feels that he's not making progress, or that he's not making enough progress, or just that, there's no end in sight. And I figured the best way to prove and show to him also was to make these videos and show that, hey, this was you then. This is, the good days you were having then, but now you're making better days and you're making progress. And for him to physically be able to see that, actually see a video of himself making that progress, I think is something that'll really aid and help him on the road. So yeah, I've got some videos of stuff like that, and I'll continue to take more off and on. And I don't know if I'll take any of the bad moments. I don't want to have to go back and rewatch those moments, I guess. And I don't know if I really want anybody else seeing those, even him. But then again, maybe I should anyway, because, he can go back and see, oh wow, that was a really bad day, but today's 1,000 times better, type of thing. So I don't know. I'll gauge that as I go, I guess. I'll decide in those moments. But that's my plan. Like I said, sorry I'm repeating myself, but yeah, I will be making more videos, and some of the videos to follow will be updates of my father. Potentially some of the stuff just to show other people, like his friends and classmates and everybody out there, that way you guys actually get to see him on his good days, and see that those days are good. But also, I did talk to him, and I'm pretty sure he'll remember it when I bring it up again, because he thought it was a decent idea. I explained all of this that I just explained to you to him, and he kind of laughed at me. But I know he understands, and he thought it was a good idea, but he also, I think he still wants me to keep doing video stuff, because he knows I rather enjoy doing videos and editing and stuff like that. But it also kind of gives me a little bit of an outlet to step away from everything, and maybe, even videos like this are pertaining to him. It still gives me an outlet to step outside of it a little bit and keep myself occupied enough that, I'm not just kind of losing my mind doing nothing, or feeling like I'm not doing anything. So yeah, he thought it was a good idea, and I've got some things that I'm going to implement and do. And I want to make these videos too of some of the stuff I'll be doing and setting up and changing and making happen and whatever else, also for him, because he's not here to be a part of it or help me with it or see it. So that way, later on, I can sit down with him and watch him and show him updates and be like, hey Dad, this is what I did, while you were here going through all this, and this is what I did to make changes or help and updating and whatever. You guys get it. You understand, I think, what I'm saying here. At this rate, I'm just kind of babbling because it's helping a little bit. But yeah, guys, that's where we're at. I will do my best to update you as soon as possible, as soon as I hear something new or find out, especially with LTech and or lack thereof, just whatever we find out from here on out. But those of you sending out prayers and thoughts and just whatever, keep doing it. Please don't stop. I know that I've probably been praying a lot more than I've ever prayed in my entire life, and I know there's a lot of people out there praying for him, and people that don't even know him, and just yeah, just keep it up. I believe in miracles and I believe in prayer, and I haven't been wasting any of the prayers on myself. I've been very clear in what I think and what I sometimes, I guess, tell God and not ask God, but more or less that, uh, you know, I'm not wasting prayers on myself. If you're going to give my dad a miracle, then you give him a miracle for him and not me. That just, so yeah, I, I guess that's all I've got for now, guys. I appreciate all of you. I'm sorry this is a long video. It's the only way I could find a way to kind of get all this information out to you and just explain everything. So, hopefully next update will be good news. A lot better news anyway. So, Reaper out.